What is up, my trunk slaying friends? I hope you are having a fantastic Tuesday. It is, as you know, the beginning of conference season. Many of you are out and about, pressing the flesh, shaking babies, and kissing hands. I love it. Keep slaying. You're all amazing. What I wanted to talk about today, brief departure from my onboarding series, which was getting boring and too long. I was on Reddit. I never go there, right? And I saw this post that I have been struggling all morning to turn into a video, and I have re-recorded at this point about 2 hours of footage. And finally, I took all of that video and put it right in the fuck it bucket and said, let's start over on the point that I keep coming back to. So there was this post on our MSP that was your classic, are all MSPs terrible? I left my internal sysadmin job to go work for an MSP. And at some point, I'll get to doing a video about the various topics in this post. The TLDR is no, all MSPs are not terrible. Most MSPs are fantastic. This particular MSP may or may not be terrible. Who knows? I can't tell from the post. But a part of it that stuck out to me, they kept getting hung up on, the person had mentioned that they had a good interview, and it was stressed during the interview that this MSP was like a family. And I hear this said a lot, not just in MSPs, but in small businesses in general. And y'all need to stop saying that, because you're not communicating what you think you're communicating. And the employee culture has moved to the point where that is typically taken as a toxic sign rather than the positive cultural sign that you want it to be. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. I think we can all agree that employers want productive, high-performing employees, right? And we often find that our most productive, highest performing employees are employees that are a culture fit, that get along with each other and our company and our values. This is nothing new. I think we could all agree with this. When we start saying things like we want this to be a family, or we're like a family, or we treat you like family, that started to take on sort of a toxic overtone to a lot of employees. But I don't really care about that. What I care about is you're missing out on communicating, especially to a new employee, all the things you actually mean by that statement, which I think are way better and are much more indicative of why I want to work for you. So let's talk about a few pitfalls that I think typically come into the we're a family culture at any small business, not just an MSP. I think the first one is that we use that as a catch-all cheat code for culture fit, which is what we actually want, but we sometimes use it as an excuse for actual culture fit. I would equate it is sort of the interview and management equivalent to soaking the pans in the sink for a day. Nothing needs to be soaked in the sink for a day. We're doing that to avoid loading the dishwasher or doing the dishes. Everybody knows that. You're not fooling anybody by saying that. Kind of the same thing with saying we're a family here. It is soaking the dishes. You're not actually washing them. You're not actually getting to the point where you're building culture. So that's pitfall number one. Pitfall number two is that can lead to professional and personal lines starting to blur. And most of us don't want that to happen. In fact, most of you are very, very, very much the opposite of that, to the point where you'll fight someone in a parking lot about how badly you don't want your employees' professional and personal lives to blur. But when I hear we're like a family, those things are automatically blended. Another pitfall on that is it really starts to do something that I think is incredibly harmful for entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs who are still heavily involved in the day-to-day of their business. As I have said in other videos, and I have said to many of you in coaching sessions, there is no transitive property of loyalty. Loyalty is a currency that you are the only one who is keeping track of the bank account balance on. No one else is keeping track of loyalty. So it gets this exaggerated sense of loyalty that can end up becoming incredibly harmful because neither party is going to interpret it properly. And I think it creates a very much accidental dynamic where employees will perceive they're being taken advantage of, or employers will perceive they're being taken advantage of. And lastly, I think it relies on a bias that we all have the same interpretation of what family is, which, if you think about it, is actually pretty ridiculous because so many different people have different experiences of what families are, positive and negative. So even if you don't care about anything else I said, why in your interview process would say we're like a family and take the risk that that person has a very different interpretation of what a family is than what you have? How about instead we actually say what we mean, what we actually do at our company, which is what you're trying to communicate when you say that. So why do most of us say we're like a family here? Well, I think most people, when they say that in the interview process, what they're trying to communicate is that everybody who works at this company makes an effort to get along. Everybody makes an effort to pull their own weight. Everybody here will contribute to the greater goal. We're all rowing in the same direction. We are all consistently supporting each other. We recognize that your work and what you do at work does not define the totality of who you are as a person, that you have wants, goals, aspirations, and needs that extend outside the boundaries of work. And not only are we aware of that, we're going to actively respect that. And we apply that to everybody here. So all employees, including executive ownership, have a life outside of work. And everybody here is going to make an effort to respect that for everybody else. There will be times when you're asked to do more, and there will be times when you're extended the courtesy of, some acknowledgement of the fact that you got a personal life. That might mean at your MSP that if an employee says, my kid is sick, you say, you know what? Drop everything, go take care of your kid. I'll pick up the phone and cover your shift. Do not worry about it. That's generally what we mean when we say that. We try to communicate that maybe our coworkers have fun together. They might socialize outside of work. Maybe they play games together. Maybe they go out for, beer on Fridays. Maybe we have pizzas on Tuesdays. Maybe we play jackpot games together. Whatever it is, you're trying to communicate this sense that we have fun together, we get along, we work towards a common goal, we always support one another, and we recognize that this job isn't the totality of your existence, and our culture and our benefits and our work style all support that, and they support you being the best version of you. How many of you would say that your family does all those things for you? Put your hands down. None of us do. First of all, let's talk about the easiest one to poke a hole in. How many of you actually go out for beer or pizza or dinner with your entire family? Because when we say we're like a family here, we don't mean nobody's implying an internal family unit of your spouse and a child. They mean a family. Mamma mia, the family. Who does that? I mean, outside of major holidays or maybe getting together like on weekends or monthly, no one's like, hey, let's get the whole family like the Brady Bunch in the car and go to the zoo or go to the park. It's not a normal thing that anybody from any culture does all the time. You might do it sometimes. That's great, but you don't do it all the time. No one does. So right away, you're being disingenuous because that's not what you meant. You didn't mean go do something as and I will also, how many of you, when you go do something with your entire family, how often is that super fun for everybody, right? It's pretty rare that an actual family that gets along and gets together as a big family also always has fun as a group in a coordinated, effective way. And if you're raising your hand once again and saying it's you're not in a family, you're in a cult. Put your hand down. So the point is, if you're trying to communicate that your company gets along, socializes, and does stuff together, well, that's not most people's experience of their family. Why would you say that? Why not just explicitly say, hey, the team here really gets along. We have a culture where people enjoy hanging out outside of work. We don't force it. They do it themselves. On Fridays, a lot of the team goes to this place on their own together to grab drinks. They really love doing it. I'm really proud of them, and I enjoy being a manager at a company where my team enjoys each other's company so much. Like, I'm happy about that. Why not just say that? If, on the other hand, you are trying to communicate the idea that, hey, we respect the fact that you're a whole person And this job isn't going to define the totality of your being, and stuff will come up. Life is going to happen, and we respect that. And by us respecting that and extending you the courtesy of understanding there'll be times you'll be a little late, or you might need to at the last minute work a different shift, or maybe one day you're going to ask to come in late and stay late. Like, by giving you some accountability and autonomy to do that because we respect you as a person, we're going to ask for that back, because occasionally here that will happen. We're going to be like, hey, there's a project going on this evening that none of us wanted to do, but could you stick around and help me? Why not say that? I think that's great. Who wouldn't want to work somewhere that acknowledges the fact that my entire life doesn't start and stop at that company, and that my schedule might not always perfectly reflect what that company wants? And the company not only understands that, but they actively try to enable that and extend me trust and accountability that I can then display by doing the exact same thing for them when they're in need. Why not just say that? Another reason that I see the whole family thing being said a lot, as we talked about a little while ago, is this, I think, for all the best intentions, but really like improperly used concept of loyalty. I think a lot of us feel that, well, my family, I'm loyal to my family. So even if my family's bad or makes a mistake, I'm still going to stand by them. I'm not going to kick them out of my family. I will do what I can to try and help my family. I am loyal to them. Well, besides the fact that I think that a lot of employers place the wrong value and emphasis on the concept of loyalty, because I think a lot of you forget, and it's okay, but a lot of you forget that no one loves your baby the way you love your baby, and there is no transitive property of loyalty. You can't really transfer loyalty points, and the bank account balance I have of how loyal I was to you is never going to match the books on the bank account balance of how loyal you feel I've been to you. Besides all of those variables, why not just explain that concept that, hey, at our company, we have a culture of accountability. If you become my employee, I want you to know that I'm going to try to be loyal to you as your boss. And that means if you make a mistake, I am going to hold you accountable for the mistake. But if that mistake was made with the best interests of our clients and our MSP in mind when you made it, I'm not necessarily going to take punitive action to punish you. You're not going to lose your job because you made the wrong call about supporting a client, but afterwards could justify to me that it was in, from your view, the best interest of a client. I might have a conversation with you about why you shouldn't do that again in the future, but I'm not going to come in and beat you over it. Why not say that instead? Isn't that way better? Isn't that more actionable, interesting, and refreshing than this, family loyalty thing? And let's be clear here. At the end of the day, unlike a family, which really, short of murder or a surprise DNA test, you can't escape. Well, this is a job. In most states, it's employment at will. It might be my forever job, and I might be incredibly passionate about working for you, but it is a job. I am a resource. You are paying me to do a thing. Either one of us could leave at any point, and everybody knows that. No one's stupid. Yes, I understand day to day we're not thinking about that. We're not sitting there being like, well, I could leave whenever I want. Like, obviously that's not a healthy culture. We don't have people thinking that way all the time, but the fact still remains. I can leave my job. I can't as easily leave my family. To compare the two is a little bit disingenuous, and it sets up a position where we can start mistreating one another. And so think about that for a minute. If I'm an employee, I feel I've been very loyal to you as an employer. I feel that I've gone above and beyond multiple times, put in effort that wasn't required of me. And then you ask me for more, which is something that happens all the time. We tend to reward our best performers with more work and responsibility. How does that make me feel? And you might be saying, well, I don't do that to my staff. You want a great example of how I know you're still doing it to your staff, even if you don't mean to? Go out and give this year some sort of bonus based on some metric of some kind, whatever it is, and then set up a microphone in the room and listen to your staff talk about it. Even though it is free money, I guarantee you someone in the room will find a reason to be butthurt about the free money, and then everybody in the room will talk about and suddenly frame up an entire argument about how they're being taken advantage of and they should have been given more or less free money. This is not a you problem. This is all employees in the history of employees forever across all businesses. But my point is that we already know this is going to happen. So since we know this is already going to happen, that our employees are always going to frame things around themselves, they are always going to be the protagonists of their own stories, and our employees are always going to relate to one another better than they're going to relate to you, why would you say something that is going to set them up to automatically be biased to think they're being taken advantage of? There's one other thing I want to point out about loyalty that I hope isn't too common. There have been a lot of studies that have shown that overly loyal employees, and I want you to think like there's been cartoonish examples of this in the media. So I'm not talking about like cartoon levels of loyalty, but like overly loyal employees, they are less likely to push back and ask if something that you're doing is in the best interest of the company. They are more likely to acquiesce. And the problem with that is that can lead you to doing things that are bad for the business and in some cases even unethical. So you don't want to foster a culture where people feel like this like family sense of loyalty comes before being pragmatic and practical to supporting the entirety of the business. I don't think any of you want that. So at the end of the day, what can you do? You really just want to focus on probably all the structures and processes you've already put in place to bring value to and support your employees. You probably already have this stuff. Talk about it. Most people aren't stupid. They will understand and value your honesty. It will be refreshing in an interview process. And then later as a manager, when you're holding them accountable, you talk about the tangible structures and processes you've put in place that are actually you embodying what you mean when you say we are a family. I understand at the end of the day, there's going to be a certain percentage of you that are not willing to stop saying we're a family because you truly believe that your culture embodies a family atmosphere. And while I think my entire video is trying to tell you you're wrong, I'll take the L, and I understand some of you are going to keep saying it. So what I would advocate is that going forward, you stop associating that we're a family terminology with high performance in their metrics. So if you want to say that the culture here is family-like, I'll compromise with you, but you cannot use their job performance and what you're asking them to do and what good looks like and associate that with the concept of family. Whether it's literal family, implied whatever, you really need to draw that line. An employee needs to understand that another employee who is successful based on merit and based on meeting those metrics and goals, not because of our family culture. And an employee who is not successful but is still employed at the company is not just allowed to have a free job because we're like a family here. It's because there's an accountability loop in place. They're working through their PIP, and they either are or will not end up being a functioning member of the team. So at the very least, please don't associate the family terminology with what high performance looks like at your MSP. If you're not really sure where to start doing that, there's a common thing I see a lot of new managers do, which I have also done and is very powerful, that you can use to reframe this idea. So there's this family style term of we're all in this together. And I use that term. We've all used that term. Consider every time you go to say something that's sort of like we're all in this together, could you reframe that as we all share the same purpose, or we are all driving towards that goal, or this metric or this objective, we are all rowing towards it. We are all climbing this mountain. And just make it slightly more specific than we're all in this together, because it'll remove a little bit of the bias and a little bit of the individual interpretation that everyone in the room is going to imply, and it'll help start shifting your culture away from talking about everything like we're a family and more towards we're a cohesive team that likes each other, that works really hard and respects one another, which is ultimately what I think all of us want at our MSPs. You're all amazing. All of your families are amazing, even if I'm telling you to stop calling them that. Have a great Tuesday, everybody.